welcome to the Minnesota Homeownership Center's Welcome Home podcast and the first episode of our fourth season. That is hard to believe. My name is Bill Gray, and today we're going to discuss the center's legislative advocacy in St. Paul. Joining me are Greta Gaetz, Government Affairs Director at Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity. Welcome, Greta.
Thank you.
And President of the Homeownership Center and my boss, Roxanne Young Kimball. Welcome back, Roxanne.
Good to see you, Bill.
Great. Okay, so let me set the table here quick. The center has partnered with Twin Cities Habitat on a joint legislative agenda for the last 4 years now, I think. And that's one of the reasons why Greta is here today. The center also has supported and worked closely with the Homeownership Minnesota Coalition for the past 4 years, and Greta is the co-chair of that coalition this year. And so super excited to have her here today. This should be a good discussion. Let's start with our joint legislative agenda, shall we? We've got 4 priorities. Continued funding for the First Generation Homebuyers Community Down Payment Assistance Fund. Increasing financial support for homebuyer education, counseling, and training, or the acronym HECAT, which you will hear us say today. Establishing consumer protections for homeowners living in homeowner associations or HOA communities, and investing in The Heights, which is a large new homes construction site on St. Paul's east side. Roxanne, let's start with the First Gen Fund and HECAT expansion. Those two seem pretty straightforward. What are we pushing for?
Absolutely. Well, in the case of the First Generation Community Down Payment Assistance Fund, we're really trying to make it so that the program is permanent. We created that program in partnership with lenders and realtors and housing counselors that we convened in order to really try and figure out how might we try and better close racial disparities in homeownership in our state. In 2023, we were successful. We ended up securing $100 million from the legislature. We're on track to fully spend the $100 million that we secured. At the time that we secured the $100 million, there was $50 million that was also secured that went to Minnesota Housing. They were able to spend their $50 million in about 9 months, and our $100 million looks like it's going to be on track to be fully spent within the next 18 months. First generation homebuyer down payment assistance is really critical. It unlocks the American dream of homeownership. Most first mortgage products require a homeowner to pay something for down payment assistance. There was a national realtor study that looked at what's the source of down payment assistance that most households use. Frankly, there are some really big barriers here in Minnesota. Cash is the number one source that most households use. But here in Minnesota, affordable home prices aren't consistent with the amount of income that households have. And so a lot of folks are paying more than a third of their income for housing costs. That makes it really hard to save for the down payment assistance you need to buy a home.
Right, because they're renting and they can't make any headway.
Yep, exactly. And then the second way that most households end up paying for down payment assistance is from a gift from their parents. And if your parents never owned a home, then it can make that support really difficult to access.
And so that's why first generation.
Yes.
All right.
And the program's been really successful in trying to address racial disparities in homeownership in our region. Minnesota has, at this point, the 10th worst racial disparities in the country. And those racial disparities are in place for reasons. There are structures in place that have resulted in the racial disparities in our region. Things like redlining or the freeway expansion that happened in the 1950s, racial covenants that prevented people of color from purchasing homes, and the subprime foreclosure crisis that happened more recently in the 2000s, where households of color were disproportionately targeted for receiving subprime mortgages that then ended up leading to foreclosure. All of those systemic barriers have resulted in the racial disparities in homeownership that we have today. And first generation down payment assistance is a way for us to intervene in those trends.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting those practices. A lot of them are in the past, but we are stuck with the results of those practices yet today. They're still with us. So I think that's a really important thing. Greta, I look at the first gen fund and I see the results of it through the latest results through the end of February. 700 new homeowners, 305 buyers are currently shopping, and then 60% of the funds remaining, like Roxanne was saying. That's pretty awesome. How is this impact? You guys were real instrumental in this as well with us. How is it impacting the folks you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So Twin Cities Habitat worked on this bill in both the 2022 and 2023 legislative sessions. And it was something that we were committed to as an idea even before we thought it would be successful at the state level. And I think some of the critical pieces that are really important to me or stand out to me are the fact that it is targeted to first generation home buyers. So, as Roxanne mentioned, people who have not had access to the same generational wealth that a
Yeah,
lot of people do when they're buying a home. Something that's statewide, so not really limited by geography or like where you're buying your
that's
home.
unusual, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's really based in consumer
Yeah.
choice. And I think that's something that also extends to the fact that we deliberately created a program where people could use all different kinds of mortgage products.
Hmm.
And so folks who might need a Sharia compliant mortgage,
Mhm.
0% interest, or are an ITIN holder,
Mhm.
or just want to work with, a lender like USDA or
Mhm.
FHA or some of these other programs that
Hmm.
are out there. So it gives people more flexibility to layer that in.
Mhm.
So all in all, I think we wanted it to be really meaningful and really get to kind of addressing how people are shopping for homes and those habits already. So
Yeah.
as it's gotten to be rolling out, Twin Cities Habitat has been one of the administrators for the funds, not even just to folks who are buying homes through Habitat, but just
Hmm.
folks in the community
Hmm.
who are interested in using it.
That's great. Really important stuff. Still money left for that fund. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to First Gen DPA, FIRSTGEN and you can learn more about it. I don't want to forget about HECAT, Roxanne.
Yes. So HECAT again stands for Homebuyer Education, Counseling, and Training.
And that's what the center does, right? Through our partners. Is that how that works?
Yep, yep, it sure is. The center supports HECAT by providing training to housing counselors throughout the state. We provide a central technology system that helps with tracking every single person who meets with a housing counselor. What happens as a result of meeting with a housing counselor, whether you learned something, whether your credit score increased, whether you ended up purchasing a home, all of that sort of information is tracked in our technology system that we support, Homekeeper. And Generally speaking, HECAT is really about supporting residents so that they can learn about the process of purchasing a home wherever they are in their journey. If you're just trying to get a sense of what the homebuyer process is, then our Homestretch Homebuyer Education curriculum that the center authored is a really great resource. It's an 8-hour in-person class, or it can also be offered virtually. Um, and it goes through all the nuts and bolts of what does it mean to buy a home? How do I navigate getting a realtor? How do I navigate all of these different mortgage products like Greta
Right.
just was talking about? And how do I navigate just all the paperwork and forms that you end up signing
There's a
through the
lot.
process? Yes.
And so we're trying to continue funding for that, increase funding. How does that work? Is it funded every year?
Uh, it's it has a base budget and it's funded every year. Generally speaking, the base budget is just $857,000, which
Hmm.
isn't very much when you consider that it supports 30 different nonprofit organizations across the state
When I think we
that are
worked with
providing services.
6,000 households with that money on the buying side, anyways.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, around 8,000 on the buying side and
Okay.
around 1,000 on the foreclosure
Okay.
prevention
Uh-huh.
side each year.
And I'll just call out that that's
Yeah.
what Twin Cities Habitat uses HECAP for, is the foreclosure prevention program. And
Uh,
we really see that as a way to preserve the affordable
yeah.
homeownership that people already have. So really an important intervention as well.
Because a lot of times what happens there is it's a temporary setback and you don't want to lose what you've tried for so long to get. So that work is really important as well.
So we're asking for the base budget to increase from 857,000 a year to 2 million a year,
Okay.
which roughly equates to about $250 per household served.
All right. And we could expand our services accordingly.
Yes.
All right. Meet more people where they're at. Let's see. Greta, I think you're the best person to talk about the heights. So this is an old golf course on St. Paul's East Side, right?
Yes, it's the site of the old Hillcrest Golf Course. So it's like the furthest north, furthest east corner of St. Paul, like
Uh-huh.
almost to Maplewood.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Maplewood, so
Oh, okay, so you're
I
right
go,
there.
I go
Yeah.
past it quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Well, it's a massive site. It's
Yeah.
112 acres that
Yeah.
are being redeveloped right now.
That's super rare. in
Yes,
this-
100%.
Yeah.
And in that space too, where it's close enough to the city's
Yeah.
core, but still has a ton of opportunity.
Yeah. All right. Well, they really need that investment. Glad to see it coming together. I know you guys did your build there with the Carter Project.
Yes, so we hosted the Carter Work Project for a week, end of September, early October. It aligned with Jimmy Carter's
Yep.
100th birthday, so we celebrated that. But we had thousands of volunteers come in from
Yeah.
across the United States, and we started on 35 homes during that week.
Yeah.
I know, Roxanne, you were out volunteering with us, which was really fun. But yeah, we're the first. We're the first of the affordable housing developers that are in the ground and doing vertical
Okay.
construction right now there. So we'll ultimately do 147
Mm-hmm.
affordable homeownership units there. We're doing the first phase of that right now.
And these are single family homes?
Yeah, so it's going to be a mix. There are some single family, like standalone
Mhm.
homes, but also twin homes and some that are tris and quads. So a little
Wow.
bit more dense.
What a great opportunity. That
Mhm.
does not come around very often. All right. Don't want to forget about homeowner association reform. Roxanne, you and I have talked about this before. Tell us what that's all about.
Yeah. Well, actually, just briefly, I want to say something
Please.
about the Heights of Heaven. It is so exciting that many units are being developed all in one site.
Yeah.
It's really rare, and it's not something, frankly, that I've seen in my career in the state of Minnesota. Seeing 147 units is really remarkable
It is.
for affordable homeownership.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be the largest project in Twin Cities Habitat history by far, and the largest affordable housing development in the state when you count all of the affordable rental and senior housing that's going in as well. So really hoping to create a robust investment across the whole housing continuum. And the vision is 1,000 homes, 1,000 jobs. So like a real neighborhood with
Mhm.
all the perks and great amenities that people can expect.
Very cool. And I know there's bike trails that go through there.
Yes.
And it probably leads really well
Actually,
into
yeah, into
homeownership
HOAs, yes.
association reform.
There you
Yes,
go.
yeah. We will have an HOA for the Heights. For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Mhm.
So HOAs are a really important part of the housing continuum. It's a way whenever there's common elements in a community to take care of the common elements in the community. So, for example, if there's townhomes and they're sharing a roof,
Mhm.
you need to have an HOA that's going to help with just governing the operations and maintenance of that shared roof or any other shared property. So HOAs are a good thing. I want to be really clear about that. And HOAs in our state aren't really functioning the way that they should be or could be. Some of the stories that we've heard from our counselors that do foreclosure prevention counseling are things like Sheila Hawthorne, who's from the Washington County Community Development Association, shared. There was a homeowner that received a bill and she didn't understand why she received it. She started asking her HOA questions, and in response, she didn't get answers. Instead, she got attorney's bills. And the fine that started off as a roughly $1,000 fine ballooned into a $3,000 payment that she finally ended up making because they started threatening her with a foreclosure notice.
Because you can foreclose for HOA fees.
Yes, you sure can. You sure can. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of folks associate foreclosure with their first mortgage lender.
Right.
And first mortgage lenders, there's a lot of protections that are in place. If you have a mortgage that's going through foreclosure, there's a lot of protections and steps that have to happen in the process. There are fewer protections in the case of HOAs. And so the Homeownership Center has been working with Twin Cities Habitat and with Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid to try to put some better consumer protections in place for actually several years. It's been part of our legislative agenda, I think, the whole 4 years we've been working together.
I think we talked about this with the Home Coalition a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it really emerged for us at Habitat as an issue, like primarily during the pandemic, because there were these loopholes where despite the foreclosure moratorium, folks in HOAs were still being able to have those actions taken against them. And so again, from just the homeowner perspective, trying to think about how is there a better process here that we can have that it's just really reasonable and provides folks an opportunity to make things right before it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
Are we behind other states in this area?
We are. So as a result of the advocacy work that we were doing over the course of the last several years, the legislature decided to create a legislative working group that met over the course of the last 6 months. And I was a member of the working group. One of the things we did was look at all of the different states across the country and what sorts of protections folks had in place. I don't have it in my notes, but the Minnesota law is outdated. And I remember being surprised by how outdated it is in comparison to other states. I think it was last updated in the 90s, roughly. And, this bill is really trying to create better consumer protections for folks. So it's implementing really common sense rules that many other states had. Many other states have. Legal Aid actually did a research brief where they looked at all of the policies of different states around each of these topics. And what's proposed in the bill that's moving through the legislature right now are the best practices that many other states have in place. So things like conflict of interest rules for property managers and board members. You shouldn't be able to hire someone who's related to you and pay them whatever you want. You should have to disclose if you have a conflict of interest to everyone so that they can track what's going on with the hiring process.
Good governance,
Increased transparency for HOA boards is another one. Like you shouldn't get an attorney bill if you're just asking a question about a fine that you receive. You should know when there's going to be meetings that happen of your HOA board that you're contributing money to.
Because you pay for this, right?
Exactly.
It's a service.
Exactly. It's a service that you're paying for. And effectively, one of the analogies that was used in the working group actually is HOAs are sort of like little tiny cities. Like they're you're paying into them so that they can pay for the operations and maintenance of a place that you live. They should have requirements connected with them that are similar to the open government transparent requirements that cities have.
Well, great. Thanks for that.
Anything that you would add?
I would just say that, Habitat is really invested in making this environment work as well as it can for all stakeholders. We have Habitat homeowners living in over 60 different HOAs in the Twin Cities and are deeply involved oftentimes in answering questions and trying to help people with management of their boards, because it is just made up of all the homeowners. And so, so anything that's changing, like we are absolutely tracking and monitoring all of it, and just agree that it could be a better environment for folks, and hopefully that'll make it, even more accessible for people to participate and feel really comfortable with the housing that they're moving into.
And connected with that, the Homeownership Center is working right now to fundraise so that we can create an educational curriculum that can better support the homeowners that are making up the HOA boards. Effectively, they're volunteers that are just doing their best to navigate something that's difficult to
Right.
navigate.
Mhm.
Right.
But yeah, definitely a system that's ripe for some reform, and we're excited about that. Hopefully, having some good momentum this year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Okay, so we also want to cover the Homeownership Minnesota Coalition. So, Greta, I'm going to turn things over to you for that. Describe the coalition for us and tell us what this group is advocating for at the legislature. And I'm sure there's probably some overlap with what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. So as you mentioned, Bill, I'm the co-chair of the Homeownership Minnesota Coalition, just starting this year. We're a group of all affordable homeownership practitioners, so people who are building and providing services for homeowners across the state. There's about 12 to 15 organizations that are part of our group right now, and we were formed a handful of years ago just to really elevate affordable homeownership, kind of in the housing conversation that was
Mhm.
happening at the Capitol.
Yeah.
Just knowing that obviously there's so many different housing issues and things we should be discussing, but
Mhm.
there was really an opportunity to make sure that lawmakers were hearing from us about our expertise and our investment in this space. So we really work on, say, the 3 Ps: production, preservation, and preparation of affordable
Okay.
homeownership. And oftentimes there's a huge overlap between the issues that home members care about and the ones that
Of course. Yeah.
Habitat and the homeownership center care about. So
Mhm.
things like first generation DPA and HECAT and HOA reform are all part of the Home Coalition's agenda.
All right.
Yeah. And then I'll just say there is, a few additional interest areas,
Mhm.
oftentimes that get more deep into the production side
Mhm.
of home ownership, that the Home Coalition is really like the major voice at the Capitol for.
Mhm.
One in particular is a current program in the state budget called the Workforce and Affordable Homeownership Development Fund. So this is actually the only program in the state of Minnesota that gets at new construction of affordable home ownership. And it can be used for acquisition, rehab, that new development.
Mhm.
And I think what we're seeing this year is, there's a huge investment at the state level 2 years ago in 2023. So there was $60 million put into this program, which is great for like an influx of funding. And a
Sure.
lot of home members have benefited from that in the last few rounds to be able to try to build more and increase our supply since we're so behind as a
Mhm.
state and how many homes are out there.
Mhm.
But we're facing a huge financial cliff in that program because the base budget for it is only $250,000 a year. And so it would go from just a big spike to a very, very little amount.
Yeah.
And it's something that we're worried about because we want to be able to keep pace with the demand,
Yeah.
and we're ready to do the construction and build these homes if there's
Right.
money available for it.
Right.
Just to speak a little bit to like put it in some context, how small of an amount of 250,000 is. I was just reviewing proposals that were submitted through Hennepin County's Affordable Development Program, and the cost for doing a new construction home was ranging anywhere from $400,000 to $700,000. The range that people can actually afford to pay is anywhere between $180,000 to $300,000. So those are
Yeah.
huge deficits.
Big mismatch.
Yeah. $250,000 might be the amount to subsidize one project.
Right.
There are a lot of projects at a very low amount to be less meaningful.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I know that I've heard a lot of that from the builders too. So it is definitely a hot topic. I'm glad we're working on it. All right, I think that's it for this episode. If you are interested in exploring home ownership for your own household, you can take a home buying class and enlist the help of a home ownership advisor for free by going to our site, hocmn.org. Our advisors and educators are embedded in organizations across the state, and they'll work with you to help you get mortgage ready, educate you on the buying process from A to Z, and walk with you through every step of the process. I want to thank our guests today, Greta Gaetz and Roxanne Young Kimball. Thanks so much for coming on the show. In closing, I want to acknowledge our sponsors: Associated Bank, Bell Bank, Bremer Bank, Country Financial, Friends and Bank and Trust, Huntington Bank, Midwest One Bank, and Old National Bank. Our sincere thanks to each of these organizations for their support of our work. Thanks for watching and listening.